Exclusive, U.S. weighs viable resumption of offensive POMs income to Saudis. Resources Washington, Riyadh. The Biden management is discussing the viable lifting of its ban on U.S. sales of offensive guns to Saudi Arabia. However, any final decision is anticipated to hinge on whether Riyadh makes progress closer to ending the war in neighboring Yemen, consistent with 4 humans acquainted with the problem. Senior Saudi officers pressed their U.S. counterparts to scrap a coverage of promoting solely protecting hands to its top Gulf accomplice in numerous conferences in Riyadh and Washington in recent months, 3 of the assets said ahead of President Joe Biden's visit to the kingdom this week. The inner U.S. deliberations are informal and at an early degree, without a decision approaching, 2 assets said, and a U.S. respectable advised there were no discussions on offensive weapons under manner with the Saudis, right now. But as Biden prepares for a diplomatically sensitive journey, he has signaled that he's seeking to reset strained members of the family with Saudi Arabia at a time while he needs accelerated Gulf oil components together with closer Arab safety ties with Israel to counter Iran. At home, any move to rescind regulations on offensive guns is certain to draw competition in Congress, which includes from Biden's fellow Democrats and competition Republicans who have been vocal critics of Saudi Arabia, congressional aides say. Soon after taking office early ultimate year, Biden adopted a more difficult stance over Saudi Arabia's marketing campaign in opposition to the Iran-aligned Houthis in Yemen, which has inflicted heavy civilian casualties, and Riyadh's human rights document, especially the 2018 killing of Washington Post journalist and political opponent Jamal Khashoggi. Biden, who as a presidential candidate denounced Saudi Arabia as a pariah, declared in February 2021 a halt to U.S. help for offensive operations in Yemen, along with relevant hands income. Saudi Arabia, the most important U.S. arms patron, has chafed beneath those restrictions, which froze the form of weapons sales that preceding U.S. administrations had provided for decades. Biden's technique has softened considering that Russia's invasion of Ukraine in March, which has induced America and other Western countries to attraction to Saudi Arabia, the sector's top oil exporter, to pump extra oil to offset lack of Russian elements. Saudi Arabia additionally received White House reward for agreeing in early June on a 2-month extension of a UN-brokered truce in Yemen, scene of the world's worst humanitarian disaster. Washington could now want to see it turned into a permanent ceasefire. An individual in Washington acquainted with the problem mentioned the administration had began internal discussions approximately the opportunity of getting rid of Saudi weapons regulations but indicated that they had not reached a decision-making stage. Among the times whilst Saudi officers raised the request became at some stage in Deputy Minister of Defense Khalid bin Salman's go to Washington in May, in keeping with a second source. The Saudi authorities did not respond to a request for comment. Yemen conflict. The assets harassed, however, that no statement was predicted around Biden's July 13-16 ride, with the intention to include stops in Israel and the West Bank. Any selection, they said, is expected to rely closely on whether or not Riyadh is deemed to have achieved sufficient to discover a political settlement to the Yemen conflict. Among the biggest ticket objects the Saudis might in all likelihood are seeking for are precision-guided munitions (PGM), which includes those authorized under former President Donald Trump within the face of objections from members of Congress. But the Biden administration is anticipated to move cautiously because it discusses which systems is probably presented, 2 sources stated. Amnesty International said U.S.-made precision-guided bombs were used in a Saudi-led coalition air strike on a jail in Yemen in January that killed ratings. If Washington eases the ban, it can be simpler to push through sales of less lethal gadget including armored employees providers or refill shares of less sophisticated ground-to-ground and air-to-ground weaponry. Even beneath current regulations, the U.S. started out stepping up its Navy guide for Saudi Arabia earlier this 12 months following Houthi missile strikes on the country. Washington accepted missiles and an anti-ballistic defense device sales to Saudi Arabia, the Pentagon said in November, and America dispatched Patriot missiles this year as well, all deemed with the aid of U.S.